A farm boy whom nobody likes one day accidentally runs into a rebellion led by a necromancer of the legacy profession. At the critical moment, he unexpectedly steals the necromancer's powers instead, obtaining a second profession and gaining the ability to cultivate the undead. From that moment on, he begins his rise from the bottom all the way to the peak of life. In Fangwan City, the class awakening ceremony was about to begin. A young man stepped down from a carriage, thanking Uncle Jiang before watching him drive off. Looking around, he thought that, just as expected from the annual awakening test, the place was incredibly lively. Within the barrier, humans underwent their profession awakening test the moment they reached adulthood. The professions varied greatly, as did their rarity levels, ranging from N rank, R rank, SR rank, and SSR rank, all the way up to UR rank. The rarer the class, the stronger the combat power, and anyone who awakened a powerful class could gain direct entry into a top academy. All around him, young people who had come for their awakening were praying to legacy class holders for blessings, hoping for a better outcome than usual. Someone nearby was pleading for the great master berserker to bless him with an S-rank class. Another person urged the line to hurry up since it was almost his turn, while someone else was sincerely asking the great heavenly maiden, whose story she had admired since childhood, to bless her so she could become a noble legacy class holder. A different guy scoffed, commenting that some people were just daydreaming in broad daylight. Hearing all this made the carriage boy curious, so he asked a nearby teen what the fuss was about. The teen explained the rumors. A new legacy class holder was supposed to appear in this year's test. Since there were still 4 vacant legacy class slots, everyone was naturally praying as hard as they could. The carriage boy began to think that if everyone was this eager to improve this year, business should be good for him. Just then, a signal sounded, and it was announced that the test was starting. Results were read out one after another. Lin with an R-rank class at level 10 and 13 mana points, Shaw with an N-rank class at level 8 and 8 mana points, and G5 with an F-rank class at level 34 and 55 mana points. When G5 was admitted, someone nearby remarked in envy that G5 actually had 55 mana points, wishing they had that much. Seizing the moment, the young man from the carriage took something out and casually asked the envious guy if he would like a tomato that could increase his mana. A tomato that increased mana instantly caught everyone's attention. He explained that he was a spirit plant doctor and that this was a superior variety he had carefully cultivated. Each tomato, he claimed, could increase a person's mana by 5% for 5 minutes, priced at only 5 gold coins each. He also mentioned he had hunger sweet potatoes that could keep a person full for an entire day, slimming cucumbers that burned fat, and power potatoes that increased attack power by 10%. The others looked doubtful, hoping it wasn't some kind of scam, but he reiterated that his produce could increase mana and even help with weight loss. Since they were all sick of eating energy bars every single day, they eventually decided that trying something new wouldn't hurt. He announced that it was first come, first served, and once the limited stock was sold out, that would be it. The first customer could even get a free sample. The guy who stepped up first was only half convinced, examining the tomato skeptically. But after taking a bite, he felt an instant surge of energy. He exclaimed that his mana had really increased, and that his body suddenly felt lighter. Someone else rushed over, wondering if he was seeing things. He recognized the vegetables as spirit crops developed by the Extraordinary Academy's Agri-Institute, supposedly supplied only to S-rank students. The boy explained that this was a special event for the testing assembly, and that everyone here had the potential to become students of the academy in the future. The man immediately asked to have all the stock wrapped up for him. The others were not pleased, arguing that they had been there first. Now that they had witnessed the effects firsthand, they all wanted to buy. The boy thought to himself that although he only had a farmer-type class, ever since reaching max level, the vegetables and fruits he grew somehow gained beneficial buffs. He admitted inwardly that he had used a few marketing tricks, but the effects of his produce were the real deal. Later, in front of a certain shop, another man appeared while the boy was packing his things. The man listed off the items he had brought: chestnuts and pumpkin seeds for 5 gold, flour and rhinoceros dung for 7 gold, and sugar for making wine for 10 gold, along with mana and energy potions totaling 257 gold coins. The boy handed him 10 gold coins for his trouble. He then mentioned that he still didn't have enough money to buy high-grade fertilizer to improve the fields. The man thanked Brother Linfong and asked why he didn't simply grow more spirit plants if they were so useful. Linfong replied that it wasn't as simple as it looked. The man commented that it was a pity someone as talented as Linfong had ended up like this. Linfong told the man to hurry home since Auntie Xiao was waiting for him. After watching him leave, he couldn't help thinking that despite being called a genius since childhood, he had only awakened an N-rank farmer class. He joked inwardly that when he went to burn JS paper for his arch-druid father, the man might just jump out of his coffin in rage. Maybe it really was a case of opposites canceling each other out. A herbalist mother and an archduke father somehow produced a farmer. Still, when he thought about it carefully, he felt pretty satisfied with his peaceful life. He didn't have to go to the battlefield and lose his life like his father, and he wouldn't make his mother worry. Even if it was only for her sake, he had to manage their family farm properly. As he continued walking, he suddenly wondered why it felt like rain on a clear day. Before he could react, someone came crashing down right in front of him. Linfong froze, wondering if the city wall had collapsed or if the demon clan had broken in. A moment later, the fallen man shakily got back up and announced that the legacy class holder, necromancer Haizong, had defected and intended to hand over his class legacy to the demon clan. Someone nearby shouted that they needed to report this immediately. But before anything else could happen, a huge clock materialized behind the man. Linfong stared, completely stunned, wondering what on earth was happening and whether handing a class legacy to the demon clan was even possible. A surge of energy suddenly swept across the entire area. A voice snapped at him, calling him an idiot for not running and asking if he was eager to die. The speaker said that if he hadn't been injured by forbidden magic, he would have escaped the city long ago, and that once he handed his class legacy to the demon clan, he would gain an immortal body. He added that since he had stalled for this long, the academy had probably already noticed. Linfong quietly tried to sneak away, thinking that he had clearly walked right into some kind of murder scene and should leave before the man realized he was there. But he was too slow. The man caught sight of him and demanded to know who said he was allowed to leave. He mentioned that the person earlier had been Dean Yu of the Extraordinary Academy and called it a pitiful death, then suggested using Linfong's blood and bones as a sacrifice in his memory. Linfong realized he couldn't break free at all. The terrifying man had him completely trapped. He tried to calm down and think, desperately searching for anything he could use to drive the guy away. Linfong suddenly noticed a derived skill under his maxed-out farm tool mastery, something called farm tool summoning. While taking out his tool, he warned that sacrifices were something a person should handle themselves, otherwise they'd end up in the 18th level of hell. The man was stunned. He couldn't believe a mere farmer class had managed to injure him. Linfong muttered that this was it. In the next moment, a powerful burst of energy erupted from his body, sending the enemy flying. But the surrounding energy didn't settle. It kept surging higher and higher. The enemy cursed, recognizing it as the marking formation of a demon array dancer. Since things had come to this, he decided to take over Linfong's body and escape. His entire soul suddenly plunged straight into Linfong. Inside, the voice commented that although the farmer class was the lowest rank, Linfong's innate talent wasn't bad, and he should consider himself lucky to become its vessel. Linfong replied that he had trained diligently every single day since childhood, and if the demon wanted his body, he would have to earn it. The demon dismissed him with a scoff, sneering that a low rank would always be a low rank and that its power was something Linfong could never hope to reach. Linfong figured that luck clearly wasn't on his side this time, so they might as well go out together. He prepared to strike himself with the tool, causing the voice in his head to panic and demand to know what he was doing. Linfong insisted that even if they both perished, he wouldn't hand over his body. He only hoped that if he died, he wouldn't have to listen to his father's complaints in the afterlife. But before he could act, a surge of energy erupted from his heart. The demon was shocked by the dazzling light, wondering if the kid's mana was detonating. The power continued to rise, sending the demon into a panic, shrieking that this was impossible. The entity became bound, surrounded by countless restraints, before everything was swallowed in a massive explosion. A notification chimed, announcing that Linfong had obtained a new talent, the Legacy Class Necromancer. Linfong regained consciousness in shock. He was still alive, and he could still control his body. The demon hadn't succeeded. He then realized he could manipulate the same aura the demon had used. Checking the notification window, he saw that his class had mutated into Spirit Farmstead Master, Unique Level 1. His stats were listed clearly: Strength, 300 constitution, 300 agility, 100 mana, 10 spirit, 100 luck, 300. His skill list was now packed: appraisal, reclamation, undead affinity, passive, efficient planting, overgrowth, beginner, rapid harvest, undead summoning, beginner, increased yield, soul siphon, passive, and farm tool mastery at max level. Linfeng noticed that while his level had reset to 1, all the stats from his max level farmer class were still intact. He realized his mana had increased because of that bastard's soul power, which meant that when he leveled up again, his stats could break past a normal farmer's limits. There was also that new skill, undead summoning. He wondered if he could actually summon the undead, praying he wouldn't end up summoning that guy again. He experimented by channeling magic through both hands, trying different combinations. The farmer's mana and the necromancer's mana began to fuse. Closing his eyes, he thought through the possibilities. His class tree hadn't changed, he hadn't lost the farmer class. Instead, he had gained another one, necromancer. The person who entered his body had truly been a legendary legacy class holder, which made him question whether the man was actually dead. He could feel that this power wasn't fully his yet. If he failed to tame it and convert it completely, not only would his farmer class collapse, but his consciousness would eventually be devoured again. He muttered that the disgusting yellow glow really did look the part. He attempted a summoning. A magic circle appeared, and from it emerged you, the undead sage, level 1, and he, the undead wild hunt, level 1. Linfeng realized it was truly them. Even though their levels had been reset, they still retained their battle instincts and could level up again. Suddenly, he sensed the enforcement team approaching and knew he had to leave immediately. No one would believe that an ordinary farmer had killed 2 extraordinary individuals. If his current situation was exposed, it could lead to fatal consequences. His top priority was to find a place with shelter, resources, and hidden land where he could experiment with this dangerous new power and turn his father's theories into reality. One day later, at Linfeng's farmland, he noted that an entire day had passed, and the necromancer's influence on his class still hadn't faded. A TV broadcast played in the background, announcing the birthday of an old astronomy teacher. While using magic on the crops, Linfeng observed that everything catalyzed by his new power had started turning strange. The more they grew, the stranger and scarier they became. The crops had mutated so drastically that they were even snatching birds straight out of the sky. Linfeng couldn't believe what he was seeing. If anyone else witnessed this, they would assume the demon clan had invaded. He decided he needed to get rid of it immediately, realizing the new mana had caused the ordinary crop to undergo a terrifying mutation. However, if he could control this power and guide it properly, he might be able to cultivate the unique varieties his father had always envisioned, but never succeeded in creating. The kind of high-value crops that could strengthen a person's class. On the TV, the news anchor interrupted the broadcast with an urgent wanted notice. The legacy class holder, necromancer Hisha, had launched a rebellion the previous day and murdered Dean Yui. His crimes were described as heinous. Anyone providing information would be rewarded, while anyone sheltering him would be treated as an accomplice. Linfeng realized he had to be extremely careful. The necromancer's undead power absolutely couldn't be revealed. He needed to think of a name for his undead followers to avoid suspicion. Suddenly, he came up with the idea of calling them farmhands. His class panel listed him as a spirit farmstead master, so having a few helpers was perfectly normal. The news continued, stating that to deal with the increasing pressure from the demon clan, the Extraordinary Academy was expanding enrollment. All candidates who passed the examination would gain preferential access to Academy resources and be granted a private manor for cultivating high-tier crops, along with special subsidies. Enrolled students could also hire farmers to grow high-recovery crops for them. Linfeng thought that the Academy's land was safe, fertile, and resource-rich, exactly what he needed right now. He had to get in. The necromancer identity was a time bomb, but a spirit farmstead master was just a farmer in everyone else's eyes. At the Extraordinary Academy, Registration Plaza, Linfeng waited in line with the others. When asked for his name, age, awakened class, and level, he introduced himself clearly. Linfeng, 18 years old. Class, Spirit Farmstead Master, Level 1. The examiner checked Linfeng's information on the paper and muttered that he had never heard of a Spirit Farmstead Master before. Assuming it was just another non-combat class trying to sneak through, he told Linfeng to release his class aura. Lin Fong did as instructed. After sensing it, the examiner clicked his tongue. Just the useless aura of a farmer class. He called for the next person and told Lin Fong not to waste his time. The people waiting nearby burst into laughter. Someone mocked him for making up such a ridiculous class name, adding that a level 1 farmer trash actually dared to register. Another person told him to hurry back to his fields. The student in front even tried flattering the instructor, saying he wouldn't hire someone like Lin Fong to farm for him, and that he shouldn't drag down the school's strength. Lin Fong insisted that his class was a mutated type and asked the instructor to give him a chance, stating his fundamentals were solid. The instructor scoffed. What kind of fundamentals could a level 1 piece of trash possibly have? He ordered security to throw him out. Before they could touch him, Lin Fong quickly held up the admission brochure. He pointed out that it clearly stated all class users were allowed to take the exam, warning that he would report them if necessary. He even threatened to contact the Supervision Bureau, stating there was a teacher preventing him from taking the academy exam. The instructor immediately stopped, shouting at him for daring to make such threats and promising he would make Lin Fong suffer the consequences. He declared that there was no way a level 1 farmer could pass the test anyway. Some of the people in line whispered that the instructor was going too far, even if Lin Fong had a farmer class. Turning him away was one thing, but humiliating him like this was unnecessary. Someone mentioned that the instructor had failed his own promotion and had been sent to the admissions office, which might explain his foul mood. The instructor then yelled that anyone who didn't want to take the exam could get lost. Later, Lin Fong was moved to another testing area where the instructor sneered at the group, telling them it wasn't too late to admit defeat and kowtow in thanks for being allowed to leave. Lin Fong thought the process was too slow. He summoned his followers and instructed them that waiting for the rabbits to wander into the traps would take forever. He ordered them to quietly eliminate the demon-horned rabbits roaming nearby without letting anyone else notice. The summoned beings rushed into the surrounding forest and carried out his orders with precision. They wiped out so many rabbits that it was hard to believe. Even Lin Fong was stunned. He realized that the 2 summons were unbelievably strong even at level 1, and felt as if he had struck gold. Soon after, the bell rang, and the instructor announced that time was up. All candidates were ordered to step forward and hand over the rabbit horns they had collected. The first student stepped up with only 2 horns and was immediately declared a failure. Another came with 3 and was also marked as failed. When someone arrived empty-handed, the instructor called him useless trash and told him to get as far away as possible. Whispers rippled through the crowd. There were usually plenty of rabbits, so why had they been so hard to find this time? One student managed to bring 4 horns, which the instructor considered decent, noting that some didn't get a single one and would have to wait for the next enrollment expansion. Eventually, Lin Fong and the instructor came face to face. The instructor mocked him, demanding to see his haul and betting he didn't have a single horn. In response, Lin Fong unloaded a collection so massive he practically needed a teleportation circle just to bring it all out. The pile was overwhelming. The instructor was left staring with his mouth wide open, and even the student behind him couldn't hide his shock. The instructor counted a total of 500 demon-horned rabbit horns. Lin Fong calmly repeated that the total was 500 and asked if he would like to count them again. Flustered, the instructor accused him of cheating. At that moment, the director arrived and cut him off, scolding him for making things difficult for a child and demanding to know who had taught him such behavior. The instructor panicked at the sight of the director, nervously asking why he was there. The director quipped that if he hadn't come, all his pet rabbits would have been wiped out by someone with no professional ethics. He then turned to Lin Fong and informed him that he had passed the preliminary exam. Lin Fong immediately bowed, thanking the director for his fairness. The director remarked that Lin Fong felt strangely familiar, which made Lin Fong uneasy. He worried that he had already been exposed, the last thing he needed after making it this far. Suddenly, the director asked, "What is your relationship with Professor Lindsay?" Lin Fong fell silent for a moment, relieved that the director didn't seem to have noticed anything unusual about his class. He replied, "Linnea was my father. Did you know him?" The director immediately brightened. "You're the son of an old friend." Judging from the situation, he asked if Lin Fong was planning to enroll in the academy. He wondered if he was facing any difficulties and offered to open a back door for him if needed. Before he could say anything else, a female director walked over and reminded him that everyone was watching. The man suddenly noticed the gazes around him and tried to play it off, claiming he had only been speaking casually. He told Lin Fong that his uncle had urgent matters to handle first, but once Lin Fong enrolled, he would personally show him around the academy. Lin Fong couldn't shake the feeling that the teaching director seemed incredibly unreliable. The female director then addressed the students, telling those who passed the preliminary exam to follow her. She encouraged the ones who failed not to be discouraged, reminding them there would always be a next time. Meanwhile, at the Extraordinary Academy Sunwheel Branch Investigation Room, an analyst presented a theory. He noted that Dean Yu and Heisha had disappeared at the same time. He believed that Dean Yu must have discovered He Hiao's secret and was caught during the investigation, leading to both of them taking each other down. He insisted that a third party must have stolen He Xiao's legacy talent, and concluded that as long as they found the person who obtained the undead talent, they would uncover the truth. Another staff member sighed. "We understand your eagerness to prove yourself, but please stop making such brainless speculations." Tuka complained that none of them believed him, promising that he would find evidence sooner or later. Some staff members wondered if they should stop him, pointing out that he was backed by the Duke, and getting involved might be inappropriate. Someone else responded that it was better to let him go, since the Sunwheel Academy was meant for cultivating elites, not for allowing people to shove their way in just for status. Just then, the director entered and announced that orders had come from above. Once He Xiao is found, eliminate him on sight. One person asked, "What if He Xiao is already dead?" The reply was grim. He might have changed his appearance. Anyone using necromancer skills is to be eliminated without hesitation. Back at the Extraordinary Academy Re-Examination Mission Hall, the female director announced the requirements for the next stage. All students were to clear the Level 5 special dungeon outside the city, the Demon Horn Beast Lair, within a 3-hour time limit. The students immediately started panicking. A Level 5 dungeon was already pushing it when most of them were only Level 4 or 5. Grinding down the final boss might barely be possible, but completing it within 3 hours sounded realistic only for the elite. She clarified the rules. You aren't expected to clear it alone. You are allowed to form teams with a maximum size of 5 people. After forming a party, report back to register and start the timer. The hall instantly descended into chaos. Students shouted, looking for groups. Someone needed 2 more players and wanted a strong front-row warrior. Another claimed to be an elemental mage with explosive damage looking for a team. One kid even called out that he was just a little boy and asked if any big brothers would carry him. Meanwhile, Lin Fong was occupied with his status window when someone approached. He looked up to see a girl introducing herself as a Level 7 magic-type class user. She said she had seen his preliminary exam results and believed anyone who could kill that many demon-horned rabbits must be extremely strong. She politely asked if she could team up with him. Lin Fong thought that a Level 7 player was definitely strong enough to solo the dungeon. If he were still just a farmer, he would have gladly accepted the offer. However, his necromancer abilities absolutely couldn't be exposed, so he chose to decline. "I prefer to act alone," he told her. She smiled, wished him a successful clear, and walked away. Lin Fong then went to the instructor, who questioned why he didn't have a team and reminded him that the dungeon's difficulty shouldn't be underestimated. Lin Fong simply asked to be issued the mission. The instructor handed it over and asked if he was aiming for the solo clear reward, the Black Bear Gale, which was an enormous boost for low-level players. He warned him, "Don't overestimate yourself." Lin Fong thanked him for the reminder. Soon after, Lin Fong stood outside the entrance of the demon-horned beast lair, alongside the other students and instructors. The instructor looked at him again. "Where are your teammates?" "I am entering alone," Lin Fong stated. The instructor laughed and told him that a Level 5 dungeon was far too dangerous for a single person, suggesting he return after finding teammates. Lin Fong reminded him that the rules allowed for solo entry. Another instructor guessed that he was probably aiming for the solo clear reward. Someone else commented that he had guts, but questioned whether he actually had the strength to back it up. In the end, they simply wished him good luck. Lin Fong stepped into the demon-horned beast lair. Inside, the environment was completely chaotic. Monsters with long, whipping tongues were everywhere. Lin Fong noted that Level 3 and Level 4 monsters posed no threat to him anymore. With his summons at Level 6, they could take those creatures down effortlessly. He sent energy through his body and observed that his health remained stable, although the guide mentioned there would be many monsters. The sheer number he encountered was far beyond expectations. Still, he decided it was the perfect chance to test his new summoning method. From the shadows of the cave, countless eyes watched him. He activated undead summoning. This time, the undead that appeared were the very lizard-type monsters that had attacked him earlier with their long tongues. He ordered his minions to charge, and they immediately rushed forward, tearing through the surrounding creatures. Lin Feng observed that monster-form undead retained certain traits from their pre-death state. They were extremely aggressive but had low intelligence, capable of following only simple commands. However, they also consumed less mana. He wondered if they could handle chores like carrying water when they weren't fighting, as that would be convenient. He then sent his stronger summons into the fray. Once they entered the battlefield, any monster that dared appear before them was instantly wiped out. While clearing the dungeon, Lin Feng was already brainstorming other uses for his summons. He noted that the humanoid undead possessed higher intelligence, could utilize their pre-death skills, and were far more flexible in combat. In the future, he planned to have them handle menial tasks like weeding and fertilizing the fields. As more monsters fell, a notification chimed, announcing that he had reached level 7. Lin Feng realized that only half an hour had passed, yet he was already standing before the boss room. Deep inside the dungeon, he found the boss, a massive demonic bear bound in chains, roaring furiously. Lin Feng considered it the perfect opportunity to test his overall combat strength, and unleashed all his units at once. He instructed Hatchet to pin the boss from the front, ordered another unit to weaken it with curses, and had the rest harass its weak points. His summons executed the commands smoothly, and he noticed their coordination was improving. He continuously restored his mana, as maintaining control over such powerful summons drained a large amount of energy. Before long, his stronger units completely overwhelmed the boss and everything nearby. A notification followed stating that he had reached level 8, and a pile of loot materialized. Lin Feng was disappointed to see the reward was only a 10-point increase in stamina. He scoffed, calling it useless. It wasn't even as good as the buff he got from eating a batch of his super crops. A settlement notification then calculated the dungeon rewards. It confirmed his current classes, farmer and necromancer, before distributing the corresponding loot. Lin Feng realized that the dungeon settlement had actually given him 2 sets of rewards. He wondered, if he was a dual-class user and dungeon rewards could be doubled, perhaps there was room for manipulation using the crops he grew as well. Outside the dungeon, the other students were stunned. They refused to believe he had completed the run alone. They insisted it was impossible, claiming he must have just stepped into the cave for show without actually going deep inside. Someone pointed out that he was completely clean. There was no way he had fought against a pack of demonic beasts without getting a speck of dirt on him. Lin Feng ignored the speculation and went straight to the instructor to turn in the mission. When the instructor checked the results, she was shocked that he had actually passed and done it solo. Lin Feng simply laughed and smiled. The instructor informed Lin Feng that she would submit the mission scroll to the Academic Affairs Office. She warned him that solo clearing a dungeon was far too risky. If a freshman died right after entering the academy, it would create a huge liability. Lin Feng thanked her and said he understood. She told him that the final instructor interview would begin in the academy auditorium and suggested he rest first. After leaving the building, Lin Feng noticed that everyone around him kept staring. Meanwhile, the instructor silently hoped another teacher would drill some caution into him, as surviving in the academy would be difficult if he remained this reckless. Lin Feng continued walking when he sensed 2 people trailing him. He quietly began preparing his magic while the 2 monitored him from a distance. One whispered that since he had solo cleared the dungeon, his strength clearly wasn't simple, wondering if they were making a mistake. Another dismissed the concern, pointing out that no matter how strong he was still under level 10, so his power was limited. A third noted that Lin Feng had just come out of the dungeon and must have consumed a lot of energy, and no one had seen him recover. They planned to overwhelm with numbers. They were clearly after the Demon Bear Gale reward that granted 10 stamina. When they saw him walking farther away, they panicked and decided to act immediately. They called out for him to stop, shouting, "Hey farmer!" Lin Feng stopped. "Are you shouting at me?" They struck strange poses and accused him of hoarding so many rewards by himself, asking if he wasn't afraid of bursting from them. One claimed he must have gotten dog luck to pick up such a bargain. Another demanded that he hand over the Demon Bear Gale and the skill scroll. The third warned him to be sensible, or they would teach a mere farmer the power of a combat class. Lin Fong was a little embarrassed by the scene. "Why, out of all the examinees did you choose me?" one of them sneered. "Are you pretending not to know?" Another explained that the exclusive reward for a solo clear the Demon Bear Gale was valuable because it added 10 stamina, an item a farmer had no business holding. Lin Fong couldn't believe the fuss. He thought that if 10 stamina was considered amazing, then the watermelons he grew every summer could add the same amount without needing to struggle through a dungeon. He casually asked, "Is the item you're talking about this one?" The moment they saw the item, all three became greedy and demanded that Lin Fong hand it over, but before anyone could touch it, the item burst into flames and was instantly destroyed. A voice suddenly rang out. "What do you think you're doing?" The level 7 girl from earlier, Ailing, had arrived. She reminded them that private fighting was prohibited inside the academy and asked if they wanted to be disqualified. One of the boys told her the matter had nothing to do with her and that she shouldn't interfere. Ailing replied that if she couldn't stand watching it happen, then it absolutely did have something to do with her. She warned them to leave immediately, or she would report them to the instructor. The boys told her to go ahead and report, assuming she wouldn't get the chance. Since she insisted on protecting a farmer, they decided to deal with her as well. They rushed forward, declaring they would finish things quickly. Lin Fong wondered if she could handle the situation. Since she was a level 7 class user, she should be strong enough to deal with a few small fry. Ailing suggested that they join forces, but when she turned around, Lin Fong had already disappeared. From somewhere off to the side, Lin Fong tossed something back to her. "Thanks for the help. That item is yours now." Ailing stared in disbelief as all three enemies charged at her. She wondered how she had gone from helping someone to being robbed. Later, inside a temporary independent restroom, Lin Fong examined the skill scroll that had dropped in the dungeon. It seemed useless in its current state. Wondering why, he began injecting mana into it. A notification appeared. Realized new skill, Special Cultivation Beginner, consumes mana and specific materials to cultivate and strengthen undead summons. Has a chance to increase their level, improve quality, or unlock new skills. Lin Fong confirmed that it worked, and realized he needed to infuse mana from both of his classes simultaneously to activate it. He summoned his units and decided to test the new skill. After using Special Cultivation, both of his main summons advanced to level 8. The Demon-Horned Bear reached level 9, and the Demon-Horned Lizard Eagle advanced to level 7. Lin Fong was very satisfied with the results. Seeing how powerful his newly strengthened summons had become, Lin Fong couldn't help thinking that the only downside was not having new land to experiment on. He didn't want to ruin the fields at home just to test strange crops. He then spotted the girl from earlier. She called him Demon Bear Guy. But Lin Fong simply laughed and reminded her that the item belonged to her. She insisted that something so valuable couldn't possibly be given away for free. But Lin Fong still couldn't understand why anyone would treat such rotten material like a treasure. She wondered if she heard him correctly. Rotten? Later, Lin Fong headed deep into the forest, checking his surroundings to make sure no one was nearby. He began channeling his magic, wanting to see what effect the new skill might have on crops. A monstrous plant sprouted, but at first glance, it didn't seem any different from before. Then he noticed something shocking. The crop was moving. He stared in disbelief, amazed that the plants could actually animate on their own. Meanwhile, a spirit energy detector registered unusual readings, and someone began tracking them. Tuka sensed a necromancer's aura and rushed to investigate. Convinced his guess was right, he planned to eliminate the source immediately. He soon came across Lin Fong, who happened to be walking past. Tuka grabbed him by the shoulder. "Are you a farmer?" Lin Fong wondered if Tuka had been personally wronged by a farmer in the past or something. Disgust flashed across Tuka's face as he pulled his hand back. He demanded to know whether Lin Fong had seen a suspicious person nearby. Lin Fong was briefly caught off guard, but he replied calmly, "Actually, I have." Tuka urgently asked, "Where?" Lin Fong pointed a finger straight at him, saying the person was right there. Tuka was furious that a mere farmer dared to speak to him that way. He declared himself an elite of the Sunhei Academy and the nephew of the Iron Lion Duke. For a lowly farmer to be so rude was unforgivable, and he threatened to take Lin Fong down on the spot. Deep in the woods, Tuka's roar echoed as his body began to twist and change. Enraged by Lin Fong's words, he vowed that the farmer would pay a heavy price for his stupidity. His fury triggered a beast form transformation. His size expanded, muscles bulged, and his aura blasted through the forest, shaking the trees and sending rubble flying. Lin Fong had to shield his face just to keep the debris out of his eyes. "Taste this," Lin Fong muttered. He was thinking about the monkshood in his field. It had accidentally been corroded by undead manna, gaining a potent paralysis effect. The last time he tried some himself, he had been numb and unable to move for an entire day. Ground into powder, the stuff functioned perfectly as a natural anesthetic. He tossed the powder toward the raging beast. Tuka, blinded by anger, inhaled it without realizing. Within moments, his vision blurred, his limbs weakened, and a wave of dizziness hit him hard. He couldn't believe his strength was suddenly draining away. Tuka demanded to know what method Lin Fong had used. Lin Fong calmly stood there, fingers pinching his nose shut so he wouldn't inhale any of the powder himself. He explained that it was just monkshood powder, something commonly found in the fields, the very places Tuka claimed to despise. Now, that simple farmer's material had completely taken down the Duke's nephew. Lin Fong asked whether he still believed farmers were useless. If so, he called him stupid, noting that farmers could do plenty of crazy things, sometimes even surpassing and defeating combat classes. Then, while Tuka lay paralyzed, Lin Fong walked up and delivered a solid punch straight to his beast form head. Later, when the transformation finally wore off, Tuka was left bound tightly to a tree. Lin Fong told him that if he couldn't even beat a farmer, he had no right calling himself an elite. He said he'd leave him there to cool off, and when someone eventually found him, he should consider it a lesson learned. Suddenly, an academy-wide announcement blared, calling for all candidates to gather at the auditorium for the instructor interview. Lin Fong realized the interview was starting and rushed off. He absolutely couldn't miss this. Outside the extraordinary academy auditorium, crowds had gathered. Many candidates weren't even interested in studying. They were just there for the girls, dreaming of a luxurious, carefree life funded entirely by their families, enjoying everything without effort or responsibility before real life eventually crushed their dreams. The pampered boys outside the auditorium gossiped as Lin Fong walked by. Someone whispered that he was the one who solo cleared the level 5 dungeon. Another claimed he only knew how to run away and live off a woman. Someone else sneered that he was far worse than Sai and Bu. Another added that while Lin Fong might be strong compared to normal candidates, he himself was a level 5 elite, so the advantage was clearly his. Ailing approached Lin Fong and tried handing the item back again, insisting she didn't want to keep it. Lin Fong repeated that she should keep it. He had no use for it at all. He casually munched on a crop and a notification popped up. Temporary Constitution +2. Temporary Constitution +2. People nearby were still staring at him instead of paying attention to their dates, who suddenly seemed less interesting compared to the mysterious farmer who cleared a dungeon alone. Lin Fong, however, didn't understand the fuss. He wondered why everyone treated such junk like treasure. Were they all idiots? Inside the auditorium, rows of instructors sat behind long tables. One of them announced that the interview process was mutual, while instructors chose their students. Students also chose their instructors. They were meant to make each other successful. Students whose names are called step forward. The first candidate called was Xian. He walked forward, introduced himself as a level 6 Earth attribute warrior, and demonstrated his ability by summoning rock armor. Aura surged around him, and his stone armor looked solid and impressive, though nothing compared to Master Chief. One instructor nodded in approval and introduced himself as a level 44 Earth Berserker, asking if Xian would like him as a mentor. Xian agreed immediately, practically vibrating with excitement. Next, a student named Wu was called. Then, Lin Fong. He stood up and walked toward the panel. Even now, people all around continue staring at him with that same thick mix of jealousy, suspicion, and hatred. Even with the stares and whispered judgments drilling into his back, Lin Fong walked forward without a care. He introduced himself calmly. "I am Lin Fong, level 8. Occupation, Spirit Farm Lord." His aura flared out. Several girls quietly gasped. One whispered that reaching level 8 at his age was impressive. Another pointed out that he was still just a farmer and that she wasn't interested in farmers. A guy scoffed that the Extraordinary Academy existed to train elites for the front lines, not to raise ordinary people into future cannon fodder. Another instructor tried to calm the rising tension, noting that Lin Fong's preliminary test and retest results were both excellent, so he clearly had skill and talent. The director cleared his throat and suggested conducting a combat ability assessment since opinions differed so much. All the instructors immediately agreed. One woman approved with a simple nod, while another instructor muttered that he didn't care either way. He just wanted to go home and eat something nice. The director turned to Lin Fong. "Are you willing?" He reminded him that the ultimate purpose of training here was to send talent to the front lines against the demon clan. Without combat potential, joining the front lines would only result in meaningless sacrifice. Lin Fong's mind raced. A combat ability test. Right now, openly fighting would risk revealing his necromancer abilities, something he absolutely could not allow. He needed to be extremely cautious. For now, he forced a pleasant smile, hiding every trace of unease. "I agree." Later, at a temporary clearing within the auditorium grounds, everyone gathered to watch. The examiner, a powerful instructor, stood across from Lin Fong. He explained that the test was simple. Survive for 5 minutes against him to prove he had combat potential. The moment the instructor activated his power, the ground trembled. His aura surged outward like a storm. The watching students buckled under the pressure. Many were forced to their knees, unable to withstand the weight of his spiritual force. They whispered in awe, asking whether this was truly the pressure of someone above level 40. Suddenly, everyone in the audience froze. Through the crushing pressure of a level 44 instructor, they saw something that made their jaws drop. A normal little farmer was still standing there. He wasn't trembling, wasn't on his knees, and wasn't gasping for breath like everyone else. He was simply bowing slightly while striking a pose suspiciously similar to Iron Man charging his repulsors. Someone whispered in disbelief that the guy was acting like nothing was happening. The instructor seemed impressed and praised him, saying that just for his persistence, he would look highly upon him. He encouraged Lin Fong to use all his abilities and attack with full power. Hearing that, Lin Fong sprang into action. He admitted inwardly that the pressure of a level 44 expert was indeed terrifying, but it was still within what he could handle for now. He gathered mana in his hands, forming a glowing orb, and called out, "Come out, my servants!" Wrapped in spiraling threads of nature mana, the undead summon began materializing. Lin Fong felt relieved. It worked. Masking undead creatures with nature mana effectively hid their necromancer aura. It was the only way he could safely summon without exposing his forbidden abilities. A vague, cabbage-shaped bear silhouette emerged first. Lin Fong thought that honestly, who would ever guess this cabbage-headed bear was actually an undead? When the summoning finished, the audience gasped. They commented that it looked like a rare variant occupation, marveling at the richness of the nature, mana, surrounding the creature. Interest crackled through the crowd. They were finally seeing something unusual. The instructor drew his blades, both covered in their own blazing aura. The summon and the instructor stood face to face. The instructor had no idea what kind of monster he was about to fight. Both charged at each other at full speed, and their clash sent shockwaves of aura rippling across the clearing. The instructor began attacking wildly, screaming as he pushed forward. The summon staggered under the barrage, showing signs of strain. Watching from the sidelines, the director commented that the summon was remarkably loyal. Any other summoned creature would have been forcibly unsummoned after taking that much damage, but this one was still stubbornly pushing forward, even throwing punches. The instructor dodged, and the director clicked his tongue in disappointment, wondering if Old G was simply too weak. He couldn't understand why the fight looked so unimpressive from Old G's side. Meanwhile, Lin Fong remained completely calm. He knew the truth. They're undead. They don't feel pain, and they don't make a fuss. These flesh wounds only take a tiny bit of mana to recover from. That's why they don't care. The instructor, however, was thinking that he had originally just wanted to show off in front of the students, but he hadn't expected Lin Fong to actually be pretty talented. The disappointed look on the director's face was unbearable, so he decided he needed to use something real. He told Lin Fong not to worry, and that he would compensate him later for the destroyed summon. Then he told him to watch closely. Normally, summoners had to pay a steep price to form contracts with their creatures. Once a summon died, the contract ended, finished, gone for good. That was common knowledge. The instructor activated his berserker skill, Bloodthirst. With a massive punch, the undead summon was knocked backward. Its form cracked apart like shattered stone and then dissolved, disappearing completely. The instructor stood smugly with his arms crossed, clearly satisfied with himself. He confidently announced that Lin Fong must feel terrible having his summon destroyed, adding that it was fine to cry it out. He liked students with genuine emotions. In the instructor's imagination, Lin Fong was already sniffling like a pitiful farmer child whose toy had been broken. But reality was the exact opposite. Lin Fong stood there completely expressionless, not sad, not panicked, not even mildly bothered. His face was so unreadable that no one could figure out what he was thinking. The instructor was confused. He wondered if Lin Feng was so overwhelmed with sadness that he'd gone numb. However, the next moment, countless vines burst out from beneath Lin Feng's feet. They wrapped forward like serpents, flying straight toward the instructor and binding him tightly before he could even blink. Shocked, he yelled angrily, demanding to know what was happening and accusing Lin Feng of playing dirty by having so many summons. The vines squeezed until the instructor struggled, until suddenly, with a furious shout and a surge of power, he snapped them apart. The director finally intervened, telling them both to stop. He declared that Lin Feng had proven himself and was qualified to become a student of the Extraordinary Academy. However, he added that all nature-type instructors were currently deployed at the battlefield, so there was no one available to teach Lin Feng for the time being. Lin Feng immediately asked the most important question. Then, what about my cultivation resources? The director assured Lin Feng that the academy would never deduct anyone's cultivation resources. Everything would be issued normally according to standard. He added that since Lin Feng had performed exceptionally in the exam, he was allowed to make one special request. Hearing that, Lin Feng felt like heaven had opened. Freedom and resources, truly a paradise. So, he immediately said, "Then I want a piece of land." The director blinked. That was absolutely not what he expected. For most students, a request like this was the moment to demand high-grade equipment, rare cultivation treasures, or maybe even a luxurious private hall where they could dance with beautiful girls until morning instead of studying. But this kid was different. The director confirmed if Lin Feng really didn't want any precious resources or high-tier items and only wanted land. Lin Feng laughed and explained, "I am a spirit farm lord. Without land, how could I call myself one?" The director nodded and agreed. He told Lin Feng there was a piece of abandoned training wasteland in the west of the city that had been idle for a long time. He granted Lin Feng permission to use it, however he wanted. This was exactly what Lin Feng had hoped for. He thanked the director sincerely. The instructors then told him to go rest backstage. Later, inside a quiet room, Lin Feng's file sat on a table. An instructor looked over it and murmured that Spirit Farm Lord was quite an interesting occupation. A female instructor entered urgently and told the principal she had something important to report. The principal asked what it was. She handed him a delicate scroll-like object. When he opened it, the contents were shocking. The report confirmed that Tuka, their investigation team member searching for Hisha, had been murdered by a necromancer. His body had been discovered not far from the auditorium. The report stated they suspected a necromancer had infiltrated the academy. This was a monumental problem, one that could shake the entire institution. But Lin Feng hadn't killed Tuka. He had only tied him up to teach him a lesson. Whoever finished the job had framed Lin Feng deliberately. And in a place where everyone already looked down on farmers, we know exactly who they'd point their fingers at first. At the training wasteland in the west of the city, Lin Feng walked across the barren ground while checking the paper in his hand. He confirmed aloud that this was indeed the place mentioned, the training wasteland in the west of Fenyuan City. A soft green glow formed in his palm as he activated the land assignment spell. A notification appeared. 100 MU of training land, west of Fenyuan City ownership, Extraordinary Academy temporary rental agreement, 1-year exclusion barrier, activated, student Lin Feng only. Lin Feng clicked his tongue and commented that giving him only 1 year was a little stingy, but considering that most students would be heading to the battlefield after a year anyway, it was understandable. Besides, he was thrilled he now had a whole 100% MU of land entirely under his control for an entire year. He thought this was what deserved to be called a spirit farmstead master. Everyone else might look down on the occupation, but the true madness hidden within it was something only he knew. It would allow him to control the situation from the shadows while staying above all of them. He pointed a finger upward, aura swirling violently around him, and summoned all his undead companions to the field. "Now," he said, "let's get to work." Immediately, the entire group of summons scattered across the land. Some were plowing the soil, others were handling water channels. Some zipped across the ground like tractors, tilling rows at incredible speed. Meanwhile, Lin Feng relaxed under the sunlight, stretching comfortably. "Magic really does change lives," he sighed. "The ancients truly didn't deceive me." Suddenly, someone tapped him on the shoulder. Lin Feng assumed the reclamation work was done and commented that their initiative must be stronger than he expected, but one of the undead only buzzed in response. Lin Fong inspected him closely and sighed. Expecting undead to have independent consciousness is still too much, he thought. Feeling slightly disappointed, he walked away. Unbeknownst to him, the celestial undead behind him looked confused, then smirked faintly, a hint of intelligence Lin Fong completely missed. Lin Fong entered the greenhouse where he began inspecting the plants inside. Floating notifications hovered above each crop: stamina +1 permanently, unripe attack power +1 permanently, unripe life +1 temporarily. Unripe. Seeing the glowing notifications above the plants, Lin Fong felt genuinely happy. He thought that while other people cultivated their strength through long, bitter training, he could improve using crops, balanced nutrition, and a solid foundation. It was truly a blessing. He also felt it was a pity that only he could make crops with these effects. If he could increase the yield and let everyone improve through his plants, wouldn't the demon clan be nothing more than clay chickens and pottery dogs before them? After tending to the greenhouse, he realized that just planting the special crops wouldn't be enough. He needed to plant plenty of ordinary crops outside to camouflage everything. Otherwise, the greenhouse secrets would be discovered, and that was the last thing he could afford. Exposure would ruin all of the insane plans he was crafting in his mind. So, for now, he simply rolled up his sleeves and got to work. 3 days later, the wasteland had completely transformed, bigger, greener, and more alive than anything it had been in years. Lin Fong stood in the middle of the field, shovel in hand, demonstrating to his larger summons how to dig properly. He asked if they understood, and hoped they would finally grasp what he meant. A few of the undead still looked confused as they clumsily mimicked his movements, but at least they were trying. He sighed with satisfaction, thinking that having this group of helpers made planting vegetables much faster. Then he noticed one of them doing something suspicious. Lin Fong shouted, "Hey, what are you doing?" The frightened undead flinched. He had been happily munching on a plump potato. Lin Fong marched over, and the undead stiffened in fear before slowly turning his head. At that moment, a notification appeared. Undead lizard, level 6, temporary status, bone density increasing temporarily, defense increasing temporarily. Lin Fong stared in disbelief. All the undead lizards were his gains from the previous dungeon. The only difference was that this one had eaten a potato. He wondered whether undead could also receive the effects of spiritual crops. If that were true, wouldn't that be absolutely insane? In the days that followed, Lin Fong began systematically experimenting, feeding different crops to different undead and carefully recording every change, every buff, and every mutation. The research of a true spirit farmstead master had officially begun. Another figure appeared near the training wasteland, moving silently between the crops and shadows. He frowned as he observed the surroundings. He thought it was strange. When he probed the area earlier, none of these structures or plants had existed. The barrier around the land seemed flimsy to him, nothing more than a paper-thin, marshy wall. He concluded he could tear through it with a single slash. He spotted only one person inside and wondered if the whole thing was a trap. The idea intrigued him. Just as he stepped forward, something beneath him triggered. He sensed it too late. He tried to stop whatever was happening, but chaos erupted instantly. Something burst out of the soil and exploded right beneath him. The sudden blast startled him, though he managed to dodge at the last second. He scoffed, saying that this level of trickery wasn't enough to deal with him. But then, more of those explosive things began erupting from underground, angry, pulsing, swelling with unstable energy. Now, even the intruder felt a chill crawl up his spine. He cursed, demanding to know what these things were. A chain of massive explosions followed, so intense that the shock waves were visible from far away. The blasts all seemed rooted to a glowing green form deep beneath the ground, a magnificent being, like a fragment of the Earth's own spirit that Lin Fong had grown, watching the intruder with eerie luminous eyes through the thick smoke. The intruder staggered back. He cursed again, muttering that if he didn't need to gain the Duke's trust, he would never have come here a second time. He vowed that once he cut Lin Fong down, he wanted to see whether these explosions could stop him. He then began slicing through everything: roots, plants, vines, and all the careful work Lin Fong and his undead had put into the field. He didn't care about the effort, he only cared about destruction. But as he hacked through the growth, something unusual caught his attention. He paused and sensed a faint aura, an aura belonging to the undead. His expression changed. A memory surfaced, one from a wise priest. On this reconnaissance trip to Fenyuan City, your main mission is to find the necromancer, Heisha. After our last contact, he disappeared. He has an agreement with our clan. The intruder's eyes narrowed. He wondered if this place was actually Hisha's hiding spot. But why would Hisha hide here of all places? Could he have betrayed their clan? The intruder clicked his tongue, thinking that for the secret technique of immortality, a traitor like Hisha really had no shame at all. The intruder felt an even stronger surge of energy pulsing from the plants around him. The longer he stayed, the more unstable the aura became. He decided it was better not to linger. Finding Hisha was the priority. Night turned to day. Lin Fong woke up, grabbed his tools, and headed out cheerfully. He'd already catalyzed and fertilized most of the fields yesterday. Today he would handle the remaining areas. But the moment he opened his eyes fully and looked ahead, he froze. His jaw dropped. He stared for several seconds, speechless. Then he dropped his tool with a loud clatter and sprinted toward the greenhouse. His heart pounded. His mind blanked. My greenhouse, everything he had so carefully grown, looked devastated. Above him, several figures suddenly descended from the sky. Lin Fong braced himself, thinking they were enemies. But after getting a closer look, he muttered in confusion. Why would enforcement team members appear here? The enforcement officers landed and scanned the area. One of them announced that their demonic energy detector showed the source of the disturbance right at this location. They wondered why the training wasteland suddenly looked like this, and questioned whether Demon Clan members might be lurking nearby. A notification popped up before them. This land has already been leased. The officers exchanged glances, so it wasn't unowned land after all. Still, they insisted that they couldn't rule out Demon Clan activity and needed to be cautious. One of them addressed Lin Fong politely, saying they were from the enforcement team, but the atmosphere was far from welcoming. Lin Fong felt extremely uneasy. Why would the enforcement team come here of all places? The lead officer explained that their instruments had detected demonic energy here and asked Lin Fong to open the barrier to allow them inside for inspection. Another added that even they weren't clear on the exact situation yet. Lin Fong's stomach tightened. Demonic energy on the land he'd only rented a few days ago. How was that possible? Before he could respond, someone from the back, clearly irritated and impatient, snapped, "How long does it take just to get a farmer to open a barrier? Tuka was just killed by the Demon Clan, and now Demon Aura appears here. If you ask me, he's a spy." The man's tone was cold and venomous. His expression was deadly serious. Even Lin Fong felt a chill run down his spine. One of the enforcement members pointed straight at Lin Fong and coldly ordered him to surrender, calling him a spy. His expression made it clear he was ready to do whatever it took. He wasn't about to show mercy to a lowly farmer. Another enforcement member spoke up, suggesting that the captain might be acting a bit impulsively. After all, 2 people had just died, and demonic energy had appeared here again. Under those circumstances, Lin Fong was indeed highly suspicious. In truth, both enforcement members were already wary of Lin Fong. The fact that he was a farmer made them even more suspicious. In their eyes, a farmer couldn't possibly cause something like this on his own, so the only explanation was that he must be a spy who didn't act directly but instead helped the Demon Clan from behind the scenes. One of them asked Lin Fong to cooperate with the investigation and open the barrier. Lin Fong felt his heart sink. He knew he absolutely couldn't let them in. After everything that had happened inside the field, letting the enforcement team investigate freely would be disastrous. He had to find a way to drive them away. Putting on an innocent, almost pitiful expression, he said that his class was lowly and he had always been looked down upon. He explained that he only wanted to quietly cultivate and improve himself in peace. Yet now, even the enforcement team was suspecting him. He asked if they really thought someone like him could do such things, and whether a person couldn't even ask for a bit of peace anymore. One of the enforcement members was visibly shaken and turned to the captain, saying that Lin Fong already seemed miserable enough, and questioning whether they really needed to push this further. The captain, however, wasn't fooled in the slightest. He barked back that anyone could pretend to be pitiful and that he wouldn't fall for such tricks. He clearly believed Lin Fong was just acting. Without another word, the captain raised his fist and charged forward, striking straight toward Lin Fong with tremendous force. He didn't hold back at all, either because he didn't care that Lin Fong was a farmer or because he believed Lin Fong was far stronger than he looked. If Lin Fong had truly been an ordinary farmer, that punch would have crippled him on the spot. But instead, Lin Fong caught the captain's fist. Lin Fong immediately realized something was wrong. He had added too much to his constitution. Normally, he wouldn't have felt that punch at all, but now he had to pretend. So even though he had already stopped the captain's fist, he deliberately staggered back, acting as if he had been hit brutally. The captain stared at him in disbelief. He muttered that he had used so much force in that strike, yet Lin Fong was still alive. Something was clearly wrong. No matter how pitiful Lin Fong tried to look, the captain's suspicion only deepened. At this point, it felt like he genuinely wanted Lin Fong dead. Lin Fong accused him of trying to torture a confession just to close the case quickly. He leaned harder into the act, looking like an oppressed, miserable little farmer. This time, another enforcement member finally snapped. He grabbed the captain's arm and told him to calm down. He pointed out that what Lin Fong was using was nature magic. The demon clan despised anything related to nature. This was common knowledge, something even a 6-year-old would know. The captain hesitated. He realized he might have gone a bit too far. Still, since Lin Fong was just a lowly farmer, he didn't feel much guilt. Beating a farmer didn't count as a crime in his eyes. The calmer enforcement members stepped forward and apologized, saying they had misunderstood the situation. Lin Fong's nature magic was extremely pure, and they promised to clarify everything properly in the report. Lin Fong immediately latched onto that lifeline, thanking the officer and calling him a just and righteous lord. The man replied that it was simply his duty, and apologized again for the captain's excessive behavior. But behind them, the captain's anger hadn't cooled at all. Watching this scene only irritated him further. He raised his hand again, preparing an even more vicious strike. Before he could act, the other enforcement members stepped in front of Lin Fong. They refused to let any more injustice happen, and made it clear they wouldn't allow him to cross the line again. That only enraged the captain further. But with his own team standing against him, he had no choice. With a cold snort, he mounted his dragon and left. Lin Fong watched them disappear into the distance and sighed inwardly. This is troublesome. Farming alone clearly wasn't enough anymore. He needed real power for self-preservation. Just then, a paper bird fluttered down in front of him and spoke in a crisp voice. Freshman Lin Fong, please gather at the academy drill grounds tomorrow morning to participate in the new student capability assessment and grading battles. The message ended with a firm reminder that absence was not permitted, stamped by the Extraordinary Academy Academic Affairs Office. After reading it, Lin Fong let out a long sigh. He wondered why living a peaceful life was so difficult. Trouble kept piling up one after another, as if the world was determined not to let him stay low-key for even a moment. Elsewhere, 2 figures stood quietly observing. One of them, a woman, remarked that the nature magic she sensed was both pure and extremely potent. She asked the principal if the child was really just a farmer. The principal admitted he wasn't sure. According to the system, Lin Fong's profession was spirit farmstead master. The woman raised an eyebrow, surprised that someone like her, a level 50 nature-type archmage named Vera, would take an interest. She speculated that it sounded like a mutated class, and that the boy clearly had secrets. Still, she said that the nature magic alone was enough to clear him of any suspicion of colluding with the demon clan. The demon clan couldn't possibly fake such a strong life aura, one that would actually make them sick just by being near it. The principal agreed, saying that certain people should calm down now. He added that the real show was only just beginning. An aura wrapped around the 2 of them, and they vanished from sight, having already obtained what they came for. Later, at the Extraordinary Academy freshman drill grounds, crowds of students gathered, buzzing with complaints. Someone asked why there was another test when the interviews and instructor selections were already done. Another complained that the academy seemed to be throwing test after test at them without any logic. Someone else claimed to have insider information and teased the others, only to immediately say he wasn't telling. Lin Fong stood quietly among them, uninterested in what he thought were pointless ramblings from a bunch of idiots. Soon a female instructor arrived and ordered everyone to be silent. She acknowledged that they all had questions, especially about why an all-student entrance assessment was being held after the instructor interviews. She explained that urgent military intelligence had arrived from the front lines the previous day. The demon clan's offensive had intensified, and the fortress outside the 3rd barrier was now in critical danger. The academy had received direct orders to immediately dispatch a batch of vital forces to provide support. The students were stunned. One of them blurted out in disbelief that they had just enrolled and now they were being sent toward the front lines. Another student protested that they had been told they would first study and cultivate. The instructor calmly replied, "If the nest is overturned, how can the eggs remain intact? If the fortress falls, the demon clan's spearhead will point straight at Fenuan City." At that point, she asked, "Did you really think you could still cultivate peacefully inside the academy?" She made it clear that this was not a request. It was a conscription. In humanity's time of peril, no one was allowed to stay out of it. The crowd fell silent. A small boy hesitantly called out to the girl beside him, but before he could finish, Lin Fong was already standing quietly nearby. The girl gently reassured the boy not to worry, though she couldn't help thinking about Lin Fong. He was clearly outstanding, and she wondered whether he would be selected for the conscription. The instructor then ordered all freshmen to follow instructions and enter the drill grounds to prepare for the practical combat assessment. As others eagerly rushed forward, Lin Fong hung back. He thought that as a farmer class user, he probably wouldn't be selected for the front lines at this stage. Otherwise, all of his farming plans would be completely disrupted. Soon, Lin Fong found himself facing a female opponent. She commented that she had heard the spirit farmstead master was good at hiding. Striking a dramatic pose, she declared that he would turn to ash beneath her flames. Fire surged beneath her feet, lifting her into the air as blazing waves spread outward. Her attack was fast and fierce, but Lin Fong still sidestepped it effortlessly. He remarked that it was too slow and that her magic condensation was insufficient. He even added that her fire couldn't roast the sweet potatoes in his field. That comment enraged her. She immediately began chanting again, calling upon a greater fire spirit. Flames erupted even more violently this time, but Lin Fong had no interest in seeing what else she could do. He just wanted the match to end quickly. He stepped in and struck, pointing out that her wind-up was far too long and that such techniques would never work in real combat. She was sent flying. The result was announced. Lin Fong wins. Battle after battle followed. Lin Fong versus Ryan. Lin Fong versus Zomo. Lin Fong versus Lin Zishi. Lin Fong versus Luna. Lin Fong versus Bull. Lin Fong versus Gramble. Lin Fong won every single match. After so many consecutive victories, he finally thought that this should be more than enough. If things continued like this, he figured he could afford to lose the next few matches. A woman approached Lin Fong and told him that with his current talent and potential, he was fully qualified to aim for a higher platform. Lin Fong thanked her politely, though he honestly had no idea what this higher platform was supposed to mean. She explained that by accumulating credits and passing further assessments, he could advance to the higher-level Sunhei Academy. There, he would have access to better cultivation methods, stronger instructors, and might even obtain legendary weapons or powerful demonic beast mounts. Lin Fong thanked her again but said he didn't really need any of that. After all, he had already seen dragons flying around. Those things didn't impress him much anymore. The woman was taken aback and asked what he actually wanted if none of those things interested him. Lin Fong pointed calmly and said, "I only want a better and larger piece of land where I can farm in peace." That answer shocked her. She clarified that she meant his ultimate goal, what he intended to do after finishing farming those lands. Lin Fong replied, "I plan to farm more land, let more people have land to farm, and make it so that anyone who wants to farm will be able to do so." Vera was clearly surprised. She thought that this child actually wanted to reclaim land on a large scale, and found his ambition unexpectedly enormous. At that moment, the principal arrived and asked whether the wasteland in the west of the city that Lin Fong was already developing wasn't enough for him. Lin Fong felt a little embarrassed and laughed, replying that when it came to farming, the more land, the better. Soon after, the next match was announced, Lin Fong versus Ailing. Lin Fong immediately responded and headed toward the battlefield. Both the principal and Vera noticed him moving. The principal commented that the kid was quite honest. Vera said that since the child wanted it, they might as well give it to him. When the principal asked whether she intended to take him in, Vera replied that he was a very interesting kid. The announcement for battle preparation sounded. Ailing stepped forward and said that she hadn't expected to fight Lin Fong, but that she would go all out in this battle. Her expression was extremely serious. Lin Fong, however, said frankly, "I can't beat you. I originally planned to concede." To a Ling, those words felt like pure humiliation. Her expression darkened as she charged forward, accusing him of mocking her. Now she was even angrier than before. Lin Fong immediately sensed something was wrong. He realized that a Ling had jumped straight into her second combat phase without any hesitation, and muttered to himself, wondering if this was really how she liked to fight. He quickly began preparing his own farm aura. Thick vines burst out of the ground and surged toward a Ling, wrapping around her limbs. The sudden counter caught her off guard. She had been charging forward at full speed, but now she was forced to stop and deal with the vines first. With a sharp shout, she unleashed a powerful kick and shattered them, breaking free with brute force. Watching the exchange, Vera couldn't help commenting that a student under level 10 possessing such pure magic power was astonishing. The principal agreed, admitting that he had been shocked the first time he saw it as well. Both of them leaned forward, growing more and more interested. Vera added that even a renowned nature cultivator who had reached level 80 didn't possess magic power as pure as Lin Feng's. She concluded that this child's future achievements would be limitless. As fiery bursts from a ling collided with the restraining vines summoned by Lin Feng, the scene left them genuinely impressed. The principal remarked that such a high-quality seedling was extremely rare and that with proper guidance, his growth would be terrifying. Before he could finish, Vera spoke decisively, saying she had already made up her mind. She wanted to take Lin Feng as her teacher. She repeated herself to be absolutely clear. The principal nodded at first, saying it wouldn't be bad if she became his teacher, then suddenly froze. Something felt very wrong. He turned to her slowly and asked if she had said that backward. Vera calmly replied that she hadn't misspoken. She meant exactly what she said. She wanted to take Lin Feng as her teacher. The principal stared at her in disbelief and demanded to know whether her brain had been burned by the demon clan. Vera replied that even if it had been burned, she would still make the same decision. She was clearly far too impressed by Lin Feng and perhaps wanted something more than just a teacher-student relationship. At the extraordinary Academy freshman drill grounds, a high-speed, fierce battle was underway. Both fighters were going all out, their power clashing again and again. Lin Feng thought to himself that he had already shown enough strength. He figured if he pretended to weaken and admitted defeat now, everything would go exactly according to his plan. But suddenly, a voice called out from behind, warning him that if he kept slacking off, the Academy would take back the land in the west of the city and give it to someone else. Hearing that, Lin Feng's expression shifted instantly. This is bad, he thought. He couldn't allow that to happen. Taking back the land was absolutely unacceptable. Even the woman fighting him noticed the shift. Just moments ago he had been defending passively, but now his aura had completely changed. He was no longer holding back. Green, plant-like energy began flowing through his body as he channeled it into his hand. The woman braced herself, gathering flames to form a massive fireball. She launched it straight toward him without hesitation. Lin Feng stepped forward and punched right through the attack, shattering the flames instantly. He told her to take his serious punch. As the attack rushed toward her, fear flashed through her mind. She could feel just how terrifying the power behind it was. Lin Feng then calmly told her she should just let him win. The spectators were completely shocked. One of them remarked that Lin Feng, the so-called farmer, had been hiding his true strength all along. Another added that, compared to him, they looked like the real farmers. The woman examined herself and admitted that this level of control over nature was terrifying. She said it was like commanding power as easily as moving one's own fingers, something close to the origin itself. The result was announced. Lin Feng was declared the winner. She acknowledged her defeat sincerely, saying she accepted it wholeheartedly. Lin Feng responded humbly, saying that she was the truly strong one and that he only had a bit more raw strength. Inside, however, he dwelled on how close he had come to losing that land. Just then, the teacher stepped forward and praised him, saying that this was more like it. Lin Feng thanked him, and the principal told him to keep working hard, adding that he looked forward to seeing how far Lin Feng would go. However, as the principal walked away, Lin Feng's thoughts took a darker turn. Inside his mind, he cursed the old man, thinking that threatening him with the land was crossing the line. He silently swore that he would find a way to get back at him sooner or later. As he went about his day, that thought played on repeat in his head. The more he thought about it, the more annoyed he became. Just then, a woman approached him and politely asked if he could guide her in cultivation. Lin Feng was taken aback. He asked her if she was serious, pointing out that she was a combat-type cultivator asking a farmer for guidance. She introduced herself as Vera and said they had never met before, but she had witnessed his match. She explained that his use of natural manna was flawless, full of vitality and life, and unlike anything she had ever seen. She admitted that she had been stuck at her current realm for a long time and felt that his path might give her some insight. Lin Feng felt a bit embarrassed by the praise, though he couldn't deny it felt good. He asked if she was also a nature-type cultivator, mentioning that the Academy's nature instructors were still away on the battlefield. He added that he was just a farmer and didn't really have anything to teach. Vera quickly responded that skill mattered more than status. She said she didn't need to formally become his disciple. She only wished to observe him occasionally, even if it was just watching him work in the fields. Feeling his natural aura up close would be enough for her, she said. Then she bowed deeply. Seeing her bow like that made Lin Feng panic internally. He thought that this was bad. Very bad. If people found out what he was really growing in his fields, it would cause huge trouble. He immediately tried to refuse, insisting that he was only a farmer with brute strength and truly had nothing to teach. At that moment, the principal stepped in and told him to agree, saying that she was being sincere and that he should do it for his sake. He then leaned closer and whispered something into Lin Feng's ear. Hearing those words, Lin Feng froze again. Whatever the principal had said clearly hit a nerve, and he muttered that it really wasn't a good idea. But before he could object further, the matter was settled. Vera immediately thanked him excitedly, saying she would be very careful not to disturb him. She asked if she could start right away, even offering to go with him immediately. Seeing how eager she was, and remembering what the principal had whispered, Lin Feng could only sigh inwardly. Realizing he had once again been pushed into something troublesome, he told her it was up to her and mentioned that his place was on the west side of the city. Not long after, at the West City Training Wasteland greenhouse outskirts, Vera could be seen busily moving around, helping out wherever she could. She kept asking if there was anything she could do. Watching her, Lin Feng thought that her attitude was at least sincere. Still, he reminded himself that he absolutely could not let her see what was really growing inside the greenhouse. As Vera wandered around, she examined the crops and commented that she would first get familiar with the surroundings. Lin Feng told her to just take a look around the outside for now, explaining that he was busy tending to newly bred seedlings and that they required special care. While observing the plants, Vera's eyes gradually widened. She realized that the crops had all been nourished by extremely pure natural manna. They weren't ordinary at all, but high-grade plants with temporary, attribute-boosting effects. She couldn't help but say that Linfo was making her more and more curious. An hour passed and she was still examining the crops. The more she looked, the more unbelievable it felt. Finally, she asked if there was something wrong with the soil. Lin Feng casually replied that it was just ordinary soil. Vera was shocked and asked if he really hadn't used any mana crystals or elemental fertilizer. He answered honestly, saying that he had thought about it before, but those things were far too expensive for him. With his limited funds, he simply couldn't afford them. Vera stared at the crops again and muttered that they looked like they were slightly undernourished, yet somehow still thriving. Inside, she couldn't help but think that Lin Feng's natural mana was far beyond normal. If that was the case, maybe she could help him instead. She then mentioned that the academy had a regulation allowing students to exchange dungeon materials for special items at the academy warehouse. Hearing that, Lin Feng's interest was immediately piqued. He grabbed her by the shoulders and asked if what she said was true. Vera nodded and explained that, for example, the level 10 dungeon in Storm Academy, the Gloom Forest, had a boss called the Shadowfall Cobalt Chieftain. Its drop could be exchanged for a bottle of Earth Pulse. However, she added that level 10 dungeons were extremely dangerous and usually required a full team of 5 to challenge safely. She confirmed that the regulation was real, although it was going to be cancelled soon. Hearing that, Lin Feng immediately clenched his fists in excitement and said that this was perfect. He added that there was no time to waste and that he would head there right away. Vera was stunned by his reaction. She quietly thought that perhaps only someone with such a pure and straightforward heart could nurture such pure natural mana. Soon after, Lin Feng arrived at the entrance of the level 10 dungeon Gloom Forest. Few guards were standing at the gate. When they saw him approaching, one of them scoffed and asked what that farmer-looking guy was doing there, wondering if he had come to dig wild vegetables in the dungeon. Another guard laughed and pointed out that he was even carrying a hoe. Someone else recognized him and mentioned that he was the freshman named Linfo, only level 8, and questioned whether he had lost his mind trying to challenge a level 10 dungeon alone. Linf calmly took out his identification and handed it over, saying that he wanted to apply for a solo entry into Gloom Forest. The instructor on duty frowned and reminded him that his level was insufficient, and that entering alone would be extremely dangerous. However, Lin Feng calmly replied that according to academy regulations, any registered student had the right to apply. The instructor hesitated, clearly unsure. But just then, after noticing someone nearby, his expression changed. He cleared his throat and said that the regulations were indeed as stated, then reminded Lin Feng to act within his limits and retreat immediately if things became dangerous. As Lin Feng walked past, Whispers followed him from all sides. Some mocked him, saying he was an idiot who didn't know his place. Others said he was just another rookie cannon fodder who would probably die inside. A few even commented that it would be embarrassing for the academy if someone like him died in the dungeon. Ignoring them all, Lin Feng stepped into the dungeon. Inside the gloom forest, dark mist filled the air as monstrous figures began charging toward him from all directions. Seeing this, Lin Feng calmly gave an order, telling Qi, Yu, and Yi clear the path and push forward. He told them to move fast and cleanly. The summoned beings immediately surged ahead, slaughtering the monsters with ease. Compared to them, the dungeon creatures were nothing. Watching the battlefield, Lin Feng calmly issued another command, saying that it was time to rise. In response, a new undead figure emerged. An existence formed from fallen remains. It was the Shadowfall Kobold Chieftain, now reborn as an undead, its level clearly marked at 12. Seeing the final monster appear, Lin Feng immediately judged the situation. To him, this was clearly the dungeon's final boss. He felt a bit disappointed, and thought that this dungeon really wasn't much after all. Wanting to finish things quickly, he gave a simple order, telling his summons to move in. The moment the Shadowfall Kobold Chieftain tried to attack, the summoned beings rushed forward and struck it head-on. Overwhelming power erupted, and before the monster could even struggle, it was completely crushed. A system notification appeared. It announced that the Shadowfall Kobold Chieftain had been defeated, experience had been gained, and Lin Feng's level had increased to level 9. Another message followed stating that the chieftain's Feng had been obtained. Immediately after, a new notification appeared stating that the target could not be converted into an undead due to insufficient summoner level. Conversion failed. Seeing this, Lin Feng felt a slight sense of regret. He realized that his current level was still too low to summon such a powerful undead. Still, he wasn't too bothered. The main objective had already been completed. He glanced at the Feng in his possession and thought that since the item was secured, it was time to head back and exchange it for fertilizer. With that, he exited the dungeon. Outside the entrance, the same group of people were still gathered. Vera was among them. Someone beside her was saying that the frontline forces were already under pressure and that resources were limited, questioning whether it was really appropriate to exchange such valuable materials. Vera calmly responded that it wouldn't affect the front lines, explaining that what was being exchanged was fertilizer meant specifically for nature-type cultivators. The person hesitated but eventually admitted that they did have a decent stock of that material. At that moment, a system announcement echoed through the area. It declared that the first ever solo clear of the Gloom Forest dungeon had been achieved, naming Lin Feng as the clearer. The evaluation was listed as SS, and the reward was announced, 1 heroic spirit fragment. The crowd immediately erupted. Some people shouted in disbelief, saying that the heroic spirit fragment was an incredibly rare item capable of strengthening the soul and enhancing class potential. Others accused him of cheating, claiming that there was no way a level 8 student could solo a level 10 dungeon and receive an SS evaluation. Several people demanded a strict investigation, insisting that the Academy reclaim the reward, especially the heroic spirit fragment. They argued that someone like him did not deserve it. Listening to all the noise, Vera could only sigh. She admitted that she had expected him to struggle at least a little, but she never imagined he would clear the dungeon in one go. Meanwhile, Linfo glanced around at the hostile gazes directed toward him. He felt a bit helpless, thinking that trouble always seemed to follow him no matter where he went. Still, he didn't dwell on it for long. In the end, all he wanted was to keep moving forward. At the entrance to the level 10 dungeon, Gloom Forest, everyone was looking at Lin Feng with suspicious eyes. He honestly couldn't understand why people always had to act like this. He was just a farmer who liked farming. What was so wrong with that? He calmly stepped forward and told the teacher that according to Academy rules, he was there to exchange his rewards for resources. Before the teacher could respond, a guard behind him sneered and said that Lin Feng's rewards had been obtained illicitly and should be confiscated. The teacher immediately refuted that claim, stating that the rewards were issued directly by the dungeon system and that the Academy had no authority to seize them. The man clearly wasn't satisfied and said that he was willing to initiate a resource wager instead. Several others nearby showed interest, clearly having waited for an opportunity like this. Lin Feng asked what a resource wager was supposed to be. The man explained that it was a winner-takes-all bet where the victor would gain both parties' rewards while the loser would lose everything. Someone else added that it would be a dungeon speedrun supervised by academy teachers to see who could clear it faster. The teacher turned to Lin Fong and asked whether he was willing to accept the wager. Lin Fong thought for a moment before saying that there was no benefit in it for him, and that it sounded boring. He asked why he should even bother. Hearing that the man grew visibly frustrated, gritting his teeth, he said that he would add a lamp of nature blueprint to the wager. At that, Lin Fong fell silent. Vera immediately leaned closer and whispered urgently, telling him that he absolutely had to get that blueprint. She explained that the lamp of nature was a growth-type magic tool exclusive to the nature department. A blueprint could only be used once, making it extremely rare. Its effects included significantly shortening crop growth cycles without any side effects, making it the perfect tool for someone who truly loved farming. After hearing this, Lin Fong could no longer ignore the offer. Seeing his reaction, the man smirked and stepped closer, mockingly asking if the hillbilly was done thinking yet and whether he dared to accept the bet. At the same time, unseen by Lin Fong, messages were flashing on the man's communicator. Someone reported that Lin Fong had come out of the dungeon. Another message came back telling him to stall Lin Fong at all costs. When the man asked what to do if Lin Fong ignored him, the reply was clear: use resources to bait him. Put the lamp of nature blueprint on the line. The man hesitated for a moment, noting that the blueprint was the foundation of his family's rise, but eventually agreed to go through with it. Meanwhile, Lin Fong was thinking things through carefully. He knew that his necromancer abilities could not be exposed. However, if it was just a speedrun with a supervising teacher, he figured he could hide most of it without too much trouble. More importantly, the lamp of nature was simply too valuable to pass up. For what he planned to do next, it was a perfect fit, one that would greatly accelerate his progress. With that thought in mind, his decision was already made. Lin Fong finally nodded and said that he accepted. The other guy immediately burst out laughing, saying that this was perfect. He added that with a teacher supervising, Lin Fong would be exposed very soon. Soon after, they entered the level 10 dungeon, Gloom Forest, through the portal. As they stepped inside, the supervising teacher turned to Lin Fong and asked how he had managed to clear the dungeon earlier. Lin Fong calmly replied that he would simply show his strength. As he spoke, a swirling green aura began spreading from his hands. He then called out for his farm hands to come forth. In the next instant, numerous figures appeared behind him. They were all summons, and the scene was undeniably shocking. The teacher was slightly stunned. The summoning speed was incredibly fast, and the quality of the summoned troops looked extremely high. From the teacher's perspective, this was a perfect opportunity to observe exactly how Lin Fong had managed to solo clear the dungeon. Even he couldn't help feeling excited, as the dense green aura filled the surroundings and plant-based summons continued forming one after another. Then Lin Fong gave a simple command, telling them to attack with full force. Almost immediately, monsters began rushing toward them. The plant summons surged forward and unleashed their power, crushing the incoming wolves one after another. Green explosions erupted everywhere as the monsters were completely wiped out. The scale of destruction was overwhelming, yet it conveniently helped Lin Fong keep his true secrets hidden. The summons didn't stop there. They continued advancing, unleashing even more magic and leaving no monsters alive in their wake. Seeing this, the teacher couldn't hide his shock. He realized that it had taken less than a minute to completely wipe out a Cobalt patrol squad of the same level. The power on display was terrifying. He couldn't help but wonder if this was the result of a special class. Lin Fong then calmly reported that the Cobalt patrol squad had been cleared, and that they were moving on to the boss room. As they advanced deeper, a dark aura began spreading through the forest. From within it, an even more sinister presence emerged, roaring as it appeared. Lin Fong remained calm and gave another order, telling Zia to raise the shield and advance while the others followed closely behind. He added that if any kobolds attempted to flank them, they were to strike without mercy. Once again, green energy surged forward in powerful waves, repeatedly obliterating the monsters in their path. When the boss monster finally charged in with a massive attack, the summons braced themselves. Since they were formed from aura, the damage they took was minimal. They immediately counterattacked. The combined strike sent the monster flying backward, crashing into the surroundings and filling the area with debris, smoke, and chaos. The teacher was completely shaken. Inside his mind, he felt that someone with this level of combat potential absolutely had to be reported to the principal immediately. Not a single second could be wasted. The boss monster lay smashed into the ground as green aura continued to surge around Lin Fong. Slowly, the aura began to fade. but the monster remained motionless. The dungeon was clearly about to enter the reward phase, yet the teacher was still struggling to process what he had just witnessed. Lin Fong calmly asked whether he had proven himself now. The teacher answered without hesitation, saying that there was no doubt about it. Lin Fong had more than proven himself. After that, they began heading back. As they walked, the teacher noticed that Lin Fong was not following out of the dungeon, and asked whether he was leaving. Lin Fong replied that having the teacher verify things was already enough. He added that the scenery inside the dungeon was actually quite nice, and that he wanted to look around a bit more. The teacher nodded, waved, and said that he would head out first. He reminded Lin Fong that the dungeon would reset half an hour after being cleared, and told him to keep an eye on the time. As soon as the teacher disappeared through the portal, Lin Fong turned and walked straight toward the fallen boss. He thought about how his level hadn't been high enough earlier, then decided to try again. Dark energy gathered as he activated his ability once more. With a firm command, he ordered the monster to rise. From the shadows, the same boss slowly stood back up, now reborn under his control. Lin Fong had gained a new and extremely powerful summon. Soon after, Lin Fong exited the dungeon. At the entrance, the students who had been doubting him earlier stared in shock. One of them exclaimed that the fierce guy was finally out. Another nervously admitted that he had mocked Lin Fong before and wondered whether Lin Fong might hold a grudge. Someone else quickly suggested that they all leave together. None of them wanted to stay any longer. The last thing they wanted was to provoke someone like him. The teacher then stepped forward and officially announced that, in the name of Extraordinary Academy, Lin Fong had proven himself. He handed over the rewards and compensation that rightfully belonged to him. As Lin Fong accepted the bag and the blueprint, a faintly smug expression appeared on his face. He wanted everyone watching to understand one thing clearly. This was not someone they should mess with. Inside, he felt genuinely satisfied. Vera then explained to him that after the administrator came out to testify, the guy who had challenged him realized he was in the wrong, dropped the items, and ran off without another word. Lin Fong glanced at the rewards and immediately focused on what mattered most to him. He cheerfully remarked that with fertilizer secured, a full harvest was guaranteed. Before leaving, the teacher added that Lin Fong might also want a recording stone containing footage of the student's performance inside the dungeon. A loud, heavy impact echoed as someone threw a powerful punch straight into a punching bag. The scene shifted to Sun Willow Academy, inside Haru's room. Haru was clearly in a terrible mood. As he continued striking the bag, he kept thinking about Lin Fong, calling him a lowly farmer who had humiliated him again and again. He realized that brute force wouldn't work, and Academy rules couldn't touch Lin Fong either. No matter how he thought about it, neither path would solve the problem. After thinking hard for a long while, an idea finally struck him. He suddenly remembered that Lin Fong was only relying on his nature magic and summons to show off. With that thought in mind, he immediately ordered a letter to be sent to the front lines to his uncle, the Count. As the letter was taken away, Haru added another instruction, telling the messenger to have the Nature Department mentors currently rotating on the battlefield return to the academy as soon as possible. The person delivering the letter hesitated and asked if Haru was planning to use the Nature Department mentors to suppress Lin Fong. Haru answered without hesitation, saying that was exactly the plan. He thought that those old mentors valued purity and strict rules of nature magic above everything else. If they were the ones dealing with Lin Fong, he wanted to see whether Lin Fong could still act so arrogantly. At the same time, back at Extraordinary Academy, the scene shifted to Vera's room. She was repeatedly watching the dungeon recording, unable to look away. As she studied it, she muttered to herself that Lin Fong was simply a monster. In her eyes, his understanding of nature's power had already become instinctual, something far beyond normal comprehension. She briefly considered waiting until tomorrow, but immediately rejected the idea. Instead, she decided to write a letter right away to notify those same old mentors to return as soon as possible. She felt they couldn't afford to waste any more time. The worst possible outcome would be losing Lin Fong to another faction, and she was determined to keep him on their side. Without hesitation, she sent the letter off, watching as it flew away into the distance. As she looked up at the sky, admiring the drifting clouds, a faint smile appeared on her face. She calmly thought that if those old geezers didn't hurry back, their lifetime achievement honors were about to slip right through their fingers. For several days in a row, Lin Fong lived inside the dungeon. He faced countless beasts, but none of them posed any real threat. He dealt with them effortlessly. One beast fell after another, and Lin Fong stood beside the corpse, calmly scanning his surroundings as the smoke slowly dissipated. Then notifications began to appear. 10 minutes 28 seconds, 10 minutes 29 seconds, 10 minutes 30 seconds, 10 meters 31 seconds, 10 minutes 32 seconds. He was constantly breaking his own records. When Lin Feng finally exited the dungeon, the people outside immediately started commenting. One person said that he had solo cleared it again and was still this fast, treating the dungeon like his own backyard. Another remarked that he was at it again and wondered how many runs he had done today. Someone else said they hadn't bothered counting anymore and joked that the guy was just insane. Another person scoffed and told everyone to disperse, saying it was boring and that watching him grind dungeons wasn't as entertaining as watching others farm. Lin Feng walked forward, took out his item box and said that he was here to exchange for fertilizer. Brother Qin looked at him and said that student Lin Feng's accumulated credits were already enough to apply for promotion. He added that staying in the lower academy held little meaning for him and suggested that he apply for promotion to the upper academy. Lin Feng thought about it briefly, then said he wanted to be promoted to the upper academy. Chun then explained that the extraordinary academy was divided into upper and lower academies. The lower academy focused on cultivating basic talent, like the current Storm Academy, while Sunhe Academy was where elites from all lower academies gathered and was known as the upper academy. He added that after entering Sunhe Academy, the rewards available for exchange, both in quality and variety, far surpassed what the lower academy could offer. He said that this was exactly where a genius like Lin Feng belonged. Lin Feng silently repeated Sunhe Academy, the upper academy, in his mind. After thinking it through, he said that he understood and thanked the teacher. Later, Lin Feng entered the academy mission hall and stated that he was here to apply for promotion to Sunhe Academy. The receptionist asked for his name, department, and credit voucher. Lin Feng handed over his card, and his status immediately appeared. Lin Feng Nature Department. Affiliated with Storm Academy. Current credits, 30,135. Everyone present was stunned. One person muttered that he actually had over 30,000 credits. Another said that if he remembered correctly, Lin Feng was the big shot who had crazily grinded Gloom Forest. Someone else wondered just how many times he must have cleared Gloom Forest to earn that many credits. The receptionist verified the credits and handed Lin Feng his promotion mission scroll. As she passed it to him, she explained that once he completed the task and passed the review, he would officially become a member of Sunhe Academy. Lin Feng asked whether he would be able to exchange for gold-grade supplies after promoting. The lady standing nearby nodded and explained that since he was currently affiliated with Storm Academy, he could only exchange credits for bronze to silver-grade supplies. After promotion, however, he would be able to exchange for gold to platinum-grade rare supplies. Lin Feng thanked her and walked away as everyone continued staring at him. As he left, he mentioned that he was heading to the defensive line area outside the city to look for something. He added that the location was close to the manor, so it shouldn't be difficult, but before that, he needed to pick something up. While walking, a senior stopped him and warned that although the Lamp of Nature was only silver grade, its effects were not inferior to gold grade items at all. He reminded Lin Feng to maintain it properly and to be extremely careful not to let it be tainted by necrotic energy. Lin Feng assured him that he would and thanked the senior. Afterward, Lin Feng looked around and continued forward. In his mind, he thought that although the description said the Lamp of Nature could not be tainted by necrotic energy, he couldn't shake the strong urge to try it anyway. He activated the lamp and summoned his necrotic beings, causing the lamp to transform. Lin Feng realized that it had directly changed from a nature-type item into an undead-type one. As he continued experimenting, a massive amount of aura and energy spread outward. He sat there, observing carefully. After some time passed, he felt relieved that the item was sentient. He realized that by using nature-type energy, it could be reverted back into the Lamp of Nature. Otherwise, he would have had no way to explain it. Later, outside the city at Lin Feng's farm, he placed the lamp above the fields. Soon after, crops began to grow at an astonishing rate. Lin Feng couldn't help but think that the power of the Lamp of Nature was truly terrifying. Even on its first use, it produced such results. He thought that the Extraordinary Academy would surely have even more incredible items, and that he needed to complete his Upper Academy promotion mission as quickly as possible. With that in mind, he headed out, leaving his beings busy with their work. A short while later, the words "periphery of the abandoned watchtower" came into view. Lin Feng realized this was the mission location. Since it was a search mission with low visibility, he decided to proceed cautiously. The air felt fresh, and it seemed someone had been here not long ago. As he looked around, he noticed numerous footprints. While examining them, he wondered who would come to a place like this. Suddenly, he sensed something and immediately looked up. Several people were nearby. One urged the others to hurry, saying that the young master had ordered them to take the item before Lin Feng arrived and make his mission fail. Another laughed and claimed that he had found it. A third told him to keep his voice down, warning that the guy named Lin could show up at any moment. The other scoffed and said there was nothing to fear, adding that they would just burn it with fire-type magic if needed. As he spoke, he threw the book away, saying that once the item was destroyed, Lin Feng's mission would fail as well. However, the book flew straight into Lin Feng's hand. Lin Feng calmly said that in that case he should thank them. The group froze in terror, completely unprepared for this outcome. One of them cursed and blamed the other, saying it was all his fault. He even struck him and yelled for him to snatch the item back immediately. Both of them gathered aura in their hands and rushed straight at Lin Feng. Lin Feng instantly responded, gathering green aura of his own. In the blink of an eye, spikes and vines burst from the ground at incredible speed, tightly binding the two attackers. They were dragged directly in front of Lin Feng. Lin Feng asked whether they planned to give him an explanation. He even laughed, knowing that once restrained like this, there was nothing they could do. Later, at dusk outside the city farm, Lin Feng thought about Haru. He hadn't expected it to be Haru again. He realized that if this continued, he would be exposed sooner or later and needed to find a solution. At that moment, he noticed one of his necrotic summons holding a red flag and tinkering with it for quite some time. Many of the other summons were nearby, working diligently. Lin Feng watched them for a moment, then smiled and said that it was fully automated and genuinely impressive. Meanwhile, in Haru's room, one of his men reported that they had sent people to search the watchtower. They hadn't found the two men, but traces left by their own people were discovered, making it highly likely that they were already done for. Hearing this, Haru flew into a rage. He slammed his fist into the wall and cursed them as trash, yelling that they couldn't even handle such a small matter. He questioned why he even kept them around or paid them if they were so useless. His anger toward Lin Feng burned even hotter. In his mind, Haru thought that Lin Feng had actually dared to take down his people. He ordered them to contact Shadow Eclipse, telling them to offer the highest price and buy Lin Feng's life. He continued thinking that Lin Feng must have been the one who took Tuka, and that it was time for him to pay. At the Academy Mission Hall, an announcement was made congratulating student Lin Feng on officially becoming a member of Sunhei Academy, expressing hope that Lin Feng would always walk the path of seeking truth. He was handed his new uniform and student nameplate. After receiving everything, Lin Feng thought that with the promotion, he could grind even more credits and obtain more planting supplies. Later, at the level 10 Ding Gloom Forest entrance, Lin Feng handed over his nameplate and requested a solo dungeon entry. The attendant shook his head and said it was no longer possible. Lin Feng asked what was wrong, noting that it had been allowed before. The attendant explained that according to Academy regulations, in order to reserve enough promotion resources and opportunities for lower house students, upper house students were prohibited from challenging level 10 and below low-level dungeons. After hearing this, Lin Feng is both shocked and nervous. He can't believe it, and immediately asks why he can no longer grind dungeons, saying that he had planned to grind a bit more before heading back. As Lin Feng leaves, the man at the entrance thinks to himself that it's a good thing Lin Feng finally left, because if he had stayed any longer, the warehouse would have been completely emptied by that kid. Lin Feng realizes that his most efficient way of grinding supplies is now gone. He starts thinking about what to do next. Just then, someone approaches him and says that he must be the newly promoted junior brother, Lenong. He introduces himself as Ron and explains that after seeing Lin Feng wandering around, he figured Lin Feng might be having trouble finding a suitable mission. Ron adds that their squad has accepted a dangerous collection mission and is currently short one member. Lin Feng finds Ron's appearance a little too coincidental. Ron then asks if he's interested in joining, saying it's a good opportunity to get familiar with the difficulty of upper house dungeons. Lin Feng thinks that he really does need credits to exchange for supplies, and also needs to understand how strict Sunhei Academy truly is. He reasons that if it's just a collection mission, it shouldn't be too problematic. So he agrees and says he'll join them. Ron responds happily and says they should head out immediately. When they arrive at the dungeon entrance, two people are already waiting. Ron introduces them, saying one is the cold-faced Juve and the other is the sore-faced Carter. Ron explains that their objective is to collect moonlight grass deep within the forest. The mission requires 10 stalks, and according to their intelligence, night elves are patrolling the area. He instructs everyone to avoid combat if possible and focus on gathering. Deep inside the Shadow Woods, They move together and soon discover a patch of moonlight grass. One of them tells the others not to fight over, saying this is exactly what they came for and that he didn't expect the mission to go so smoothly. However, while they are carelessly collecting the grass, dust suddenly rises around them. Flying insect-type monsters swarm in from behind and launch an attack. Ron immediately warns that something is wrong and shouts that it's a night elf patrol squad, telling everyone to prepare for battle. The night elves begin attacking with sticky substances, but Ron manages to deflect the material back at them. He orders everyone to take their positions and tells Lin Fong to use nature magic to harass the enemies, explaining that night elves despise nature magic. Lin Fong responds at once, saying he understands. He releases his nature magic, sending vines spreading in every direction. The vines quickly seize the night elves, catching them completely off guard. They clearly hadn't expected such a method to restrain them. Once several are bound, Lin Fong pulls them together and ties them into a tight knot. Ron and the others immediately attack the remaining night elves, along with those trapped in the knot. After fighting for a while, Ron suddenly shouts that it's bad news and says the enemies are calling for reinforcements. He calls out to Carter and Ube. Ube responds that it's time to start, and Carter acknowledges it as well. Carter begins preparing another type of special magic. The ground suddenly splits open, causing several monsters to fall into the cracks. However, Lin Fong is also put in danger. As the ground fractures unpredictably, he loses his footing and nearly falls, barely managing to grab onto a ledge. He calls out in frustration. Ron then apologizes, saying he's very sorry, junior brother Lin Fong. He explains that this is a skill Carter only recently learned and that Carter isn't very proficient yet, which is why it accidentally affected Lin Fong. Seeing Ron's attitude and how the others deliberately place him in danger, Lin Fong asks whether they have any intention of saving him. Ron laughs and says it's not that they won't save him, but that the newly promoted junior brother of the upper house was too headstrong and insisted on challenging elite-level monsters alone. Ron declares that in the end, Lin Fong tragically sacrificed himself, and there was nothing they could do. Lin Fong makes a strange expression and asks whether they aren't worried about being exposed for murdering an academy student. Ron explains that Sunhee Academy student nameplates undergo special processing and are capable of recording powerful magical energy. He says that after Lin Fong dies, they'll take his nameplate and use it to record the elite monster's magic. Uninterested in their rambling, Lin Fong asks one final question, wondering if there is truly no other way for outsiders to know what really happened here. Ron confidently replies that they've done this many times and tells him to trust their professional standards. Lin Fong says he understands. Then he releases his grip on the ledge and appears to fall into the abyss before their eyes. Ron comments that since Lin Fong knew he couldn't resist, he chose to jump down voluntarily to give himself a quick death. But suddenly, Ron senses something is wrong. At the same moment, Lin Fang's voice asks whether they are ready as well. Lin Fong appears above them instead of below, right where they least expect him. Everyone is utterly stunned. Lin Fong calmly tells them to face his legion. Ron immediately panics, repeatedly muttering that this is bad. At the same time, Lin Fong summons his powerful undead minions. Now, true panic sets in. They never imagined such an outcome. To them, Lin Fong is an even greater monster than they are. Some of the undead even form a strange, beautiful heart shape before launching their attack. Ron screams in disbelief, shouting that Lin Fong is a necromancer and that this is impossible. Lin Fong coldly asks if this is Ron's final testament. Ron hurriedly tries to negotiate, calling Lin Fong junior brother and saying they can talk this out. He claims there was never any real conflict between them and admits that everything was arranged by Haru. He begs Lin Fong to spare them, saying they know they were wrong. Lin Fong replies that they don't know they were wrong, they only know that they're about to die. Ron desperately adds that Haru always believed Lin Fong killed Tuka and claims he can testify against Haru. Lin Fong shows no interest. He steps forward, squats down, and calmly asks who Tuka is. At first, Ron refuses to answer and turns his head away. Lin Fong then says to forget it, that it doesn't matter, and orders his minions to bury them. A massive surge of aura erupts, and soon everyone is lying motionless on the ground. Even then, Ron curses Lin Fong, saying he hopes Lin Fong dies a miserable death. Lin Fong replies that Ron's good days are just beginning. He orders Ron to rise, and all of them resurrect as undead minions. Lin Fong reflects on whether undead transformed from humanoid creatures naturally possess higher intelligence than other undead. He realizes this may be due to the night elves' magic from earlier. He decides he doesn't need to personally deal with the aftermath, but since people have died, it's best to return and report the incident. With that, he heads toward the portal to leave. However, something feels wrong. Lin Feng realizes he can't exit. Confused, he stares at the portal until a notification appears, stating that the special item Regret of the Past has taken effect. It explains that before the dungeon is fully cleared, the exit cannot be opened, and that within this dungeon, all of his attributes will be increased to 200%. Suddenly, black energy erupts around him as another presence emerges. Lin Feng is shocked by what he sees. Before him stands a massive creature, a gigantic horse fused with a towering humanoid figure. As Lin Feng watches the new figure preparing a massive attack, he suddenly feels that something serious is about to go down. He immediately summons his undead, thinking it won't be that hard to deal with, and gives the order to attack. His undead charge forward at incredible speed, just as the horse-like figure prepares its weapon. However, the undead are slightly faster and strike first. They deliver one powerful blow after another. The horse-mounted figure struggles to fight back. Soon, the horse becomes frightened, causing the rider to fall. The undead immediately follow up with another flurry of attacks, continuously damaging the fallen figure. Lin Feng casually eats a banana while observing the battle. He thinks that the undead seem to possess more instinct this time and are even capable of coordinating with each other. Still, it feels like something is missing. As the attacks keep raining down, the fallen figure can't believe what's happening. He asks why Lin Feng is able to use the power of death. Lin Feng watches silently at first, then laughs and smiles, saying that he wouldn't understand. Lin Feng then orders them to bury him. The undead intensify their assault, and the enemy finally collapses. Another massive area-wide attack follows. A status window appears showing that the area is clear and progress has reached 50%. Lin Feng comments that it is actually a dual boss system dungeon and realizes he has to continue deeper inside. At the Gloom Forest core area, massive weed-like mushrooms grow everywhere, even wrapping around the trees. Lin Feng enjoys the scenery as he moves forward. But suddenly, he senses something wrong. A huge aura erupts as a hidden area reveals itself. From within it, another figure emerges, surrounded by an overwhelming aura. The figure questions why Lin Feng has set foot in this holy land. Lin Feng responds by asking if the figure can speak human language, adding that if not, he'll start the fight. The figure is revealed as Guardian, Shivius, level 18. She remains silent for a moment, only raising her aura until the entire area is engulfed in red energy. A status window appears in front of Lin Feng, stating that he has entered the combat phase. It explains that the Spore Domain effect is active, causing all non-shadow type units to take 4 erosion damage every 3 seconds, with the decay effect stacking. It also notes that because Lin Feng has the stacked effect Regret of the Past, his undead units regenerate 1 mana per second. Feeling confident, Lin Feng says that this means the undead he summons in this dungeon can maintain themselves without consuming his mana. Lin Feng laughs and says that Regret of the Past is truly a good thing. He then summons his undead and orders them to crush everything. Another huge battle breaks out. Later, in a different area, a man thinks to himself that it's fine even if Ron and the others couldn't beat Lin Feng because the real final boss is still waiting. He thinks that although Regret of the Past increases all attributes, its true function is actually to lock the dungeon. With that kind of boss existing, even if all attributes were increased by 200% or even 400%, it would still be impossible to defeat it. Thinking about this, he laughs to himself, feeling delighted as just imagining it brings him joy. Back on Lin Feng's side, a massive explosion has just occurred. Smoke fills the area as one of the undead walks out, dragging the defeated enemy along. Lin Feng calmly eats another banana while watching the enemy being pulled toward him. The enemy is unable to speak, completely shocked and stunned. She finally asks why Lin Feng betrayed them. Lin Feng says nothing. Because of the self-edited control, he doesn't even know if she is talking to him. She then angrily accuses him of destroying her hatchery and vows revenge, but before she can finish, she is knocked unconscious. Another explosion erupts as an overwhelming surge of power spreads out. A status window appears announcing that the Gloom Forest dungeon has been cleared. The clear time is 2 hours and 17 minutes, setting a new record. The evaluation is A, and reward calculation begins. Lin Feng eats yet another banana and thinks that it's not bad at all, feeling that he has grown stronger. Soon, a huge egg-like object appears in front of him. Lin Feng is confused and wonders what it is. A notification then appears identifying it as the embryo of the Chthonic Demon, a mythical-grade item in an inactive state. The description explains that it is a life seed left behind after the fall of an ancient Chthonic demon, requiring specific conditions to hatch. Its current status is dormant, with a strong death aura detected and an affinity of 30%. As Lin Fong examines it closely, he thinks about this black egg hatchery and wonders what it really is. He then uses his storage ring to store it away entirely. After that, an exit opens, allowing him to leave immediately. However, before leaving, Lin Fong looks around one last time at the lady demon's body. He thinks that converting a level 18 boss into an undead would consume a lot of power, but once converted, it should be at least on the same level as Xia. With that thought, he gives the command to arise. Soon, the lady demon rises and becomes part of his undead legion. She then declares that she is the death executioner. After hearing this, Lin Fong is quite shocked. He says that it can actually speak and then asks if it can talk. She responds again, saying she is the death executioner. Lin Fong says, yeah, I know that already, and tries to clarify what he means, but she once again repeats that she is the death executioner. Lin Fong goes quiet for a moment, completely confused. Then she repeats the same words yet again, saying, I am the death executioner. Lin Fong finally gives up and tells her to forget it and stop talking, saying he doesn't want to hear anything else. Later, outside the Gloom Forest. Dungeon entrance. Lin Fong steps out of the portal. Guards and staff members are already gathered there. One of them is extremely shocked and says this is impossible. Another asks how Lin Fong could solo clear Gloom Forest. Someone else adds that this is a dungeon where even a 5-man squad often wipes. Another staff member steps forward and asks Lin Fong why he came out alone and where students Ron, Carter, and Ur are. Lin Fong explains that they encountered a massive night elf attack while gathering moonlight grass and unfortunately got separated. He says he barely managed to escape deeper into the dungeon, accidentally triggered the boss fight, and narrowly survived to clear it and come out. As for the three of them, he says it doesn't bode well. The staff members discuss among themselves and conclude that it does match the magical power characteristics of night elves. One of them clenches his fists in frustration and asks Lin Fong if he encountered any unexpected situations after entering the dungeon. Lin Fong replies that after entering, he gained an effect called regret of the past. The staff member is shocked and immediately asks if Lin Fong has made any enemies recently. Nearby, another person at the dungeon entrance watches in disbelief, thinking that this is impossible and wondering how Lin Fong could solo clear the dungeon boss, something no single person should be able to achieve. Lin Fong notices him from afar and tries to stay out of sight, but his height ends up giving him away anyway. Lin Fong then says that as for enemies, he doesn't really know since he just got promoted to Sunhei Academy. The staff member acknowledges this and says they will investigate the matter carefully and ensure justice for him. Lin Fong bows slightly and thanks the mentor, saying he's counting on them to handle this matter. Meanwhile, the other guy still can't believe what just happened. As Lin Fong turns to leave, he quietly thinks about how he's going to send his undead after the one who tried to take him down. And that's where we wrap up today's video. Don't forget to turn on the notification bell so you won't miss the next story. If you've enjoyed this one and want to see more, leave your comment down below. Also, don't forget to drop a like to support our channel and subscribe to stay up to date everything that comes out. See you next time. Bye-bye. And a big hug to everyone. I'm out.